We are ready to talk about instructions for review and preview 1.1.5. The first question that you will see is question 36, and it's giving us an example similar to what we worked with from our lesson from 1.1.5, where we used the raisins and the peanuts and exchanging one with the other and then exchanging back. So for part A, they start by showing you some exchange of raisins. It says, Mark gave 3 raisins to Bob as shown in the diagram. They show 3 of these being circled and there's an arrow drawn to this direction indicating that Mark has given them to Bob. So for part A, it asks you, how does the number of peanuts and raisins on Bob's tray compare to the number of peanuts and raisins on Mark's tray? They're basically just looking for a very brief observation. There's lots of answers that are possible that you could have as correct, but just what's a statement about how many of this, how many of that, something that relates Mark's tray to Bob's tray. Lots of different ways you can go with that. For part B, it says copy the diagram, but the diagram itself is already on your answer sheet for you. This is where Mark has given Bob 3 of his raisins. And in part B, it asks you to circle a group of any 3 peanuts and raisins on Bob's tray. So you can choose any of these 3 over here of Bob's to give back to Mark. So when you make your choice, you're going to circle any 3 of those and draw an arrow so that we can see this is going back to Mark's tray. And once you have done that, this line right down here is where you can write a statement about does Bob now have more of Mark's raisins or does Mark have more of Bob's peanuts? So if you think back to what we talked about in lesson 1.1.5, you probably already know the answer to that part there on B. For part C, it says now start from the beginning and repeat parts A and B. This time, assume that 8 instead of 3 snack items are handed back from one student to the other. You're going to notice all you have is this line here. I do not expect you to draw this. I don't expect anything quite as advanced as that, because again, based on what we talked about in this lesson, you probably already know what should happen in the end, whether we exchange 3 items or whether we exchange 5 or 8. So again, probably already know, or should already know, how we would answer part C. Next, we've got question 37. And for question 37, there's some space right up here for a diagram. It describes a situation, and I'm going to show you an example of how your diagram can look here. It says Eli walked 12 feet down the hall of his house to get to the door. So I'm going to start off with a line this way. I'm putting an arrow on the end to indicate this is the direction he's going. He has traveled 12 feet down the hall, and that gets him to the front door. Then it says he continued in a straight line out the door and across the yard to the mailbox, a distance of 32 feet. So he's going to travel 32 more feet in this direction. So I'm going to label that part 32. And this point right here is the mailbox. Now it says he came straight back across the yard 14 feet and stopped to pet his dog. Now because he's turned around and he's heading back to the house, I'm just going to start here but drop down and draw an arrow this way. He's going back this direction 14 feet. So for part A, that's all I have to do. It's just asking me for a diagram. But part B asks, how far has he walked? So he's got 1, 2, 3 separate sections to what he's walked. It's asking you for the total. Not only am I looking for a number, but I'm looking for a number that has a label. So be specific and tell me he walked this far and it's this many units. For part C, how far from the house is he now? If this is the front door, this is where we would consider the house. He's not yet back to the house. So part C is asking you, how far away is he still located from the house? For question 38, It's one that we see a stoplight icon next to, and it tells you in your ebook that a stoplight icon tells us, hey, there may or may not be a mistake here. That's what we're looking for in a question like that. And we see some circles that two girls are trying to divide up into 3 equal parts, and equal is the key word here. So the question is asking you, what do you think? Is one picture incorrect? So you're going to start with yes or no. Either there's one wrong or they're both okay. And if you say yes, one is incorrect, then you have to be able to tell me why. Why is that circle wrong? What's wrong about it? For question 39, we saw one a lot like this the other day on 1.1.4. It's giving you the start of a pattern. They give you the first 5 terms of a pattern and asking you to figure out the next 5 terms. And again, like the other day, asking you to describe it in words. So start with 2 and do this repeatedly. Start with 100 and do this repeatedly. The one hint that I try to give people if they're stuck on a pattern is to look specifically at each step. What's happening here? Is it increasing or decreasing? By how much is it increasing or decreasing? Then let's look at the next part. What's happening from 5 to 3? Is it increasing or is it decreasing? Same thing for 3 to 6. We've got to look at each term and how it relates to the next one to see what the pattern is that's being formed. For question 40, that's the last one that you've got, and we did have a question like this in 1.1.4 also. It's asking you to, again, do some rounding. So they show you a number, then in parentheses, they are indicating the place they want you to round it to. So pay close attention whether it's 10,000 or 10,000th, like we see in part A. And again, if you would like a reminder or just want some help on what's going on here with the rounding, go back to lesson 1.1.4 and the math notes box ahead of the review and preview will be some good reminders for you there with rounding. And that is question 40.